Hello and welcome. So today we're going to pull back the curtain on language teaching. We're going to explore the hidden architecture that really makes a language class work, looking at the actual blueprint used to design the whole learning experience. I mean, you've probably wondered this, right? What makes a great language class? Sometimes it feels like magic, but behind every single effective method, there's a surprisingly detailed and deliberate plan. Okay, let's dive into what that looks like. And that plan? Well, it's called the design. And I want you to think of it exactly like an architectural blueprint. It really is the master plan that asks all the big questions. Why are we even teaching this? That's our purpose. What are we teaching? That's the content. And how, specifically, are we going to do it? That covers the activities, the roles, and all the materials. It connects every single decision. So, to really understand this blueprint, we'll walk through 5 key sections. We're going to start with the overall blueprint, then look at the goals and content, then see what happens when learning's in action, we'll cover the roles we play, and finally, we'll check out the tools of the trade. All right, first up, let's lay out the foundational elements. Every single language teaching method out there is built on top of these 6 core components. Now, the crucial thing here isn't just knowing these 6 parts exist, it's understanding that they are completely interdependent. If you change just one, say the teacher's role, it's going to cause a ripple effect and change the activities and the materials you can use. They have to lock together perfectly to create one coherent system. Okay, so let's move on to our first 2 components and see how this all builds up. We'll start with the why and the what of our blueprint. You know, the purpose of the building and its basic layout. Every method has to start with a goal. What are we trying to achieve here? These are the objectives. Is the main point to develop perfect grammar and pronunciation? Or is it more about being able to communicate meaningfully, even if you make a few mistakes? The answer to that question shapes literally everything else. Now, what's really fascinating here is the big question this asks about learning itself. Is language just a collection of items to be acquired, kind of like stamps in a book? That's the product-oriented view. Or is language a skill to be developed, where the real goal is to get better at the process of learning? That's the process-oriented view. And that one choice sends a method in one of 2 very, very different directions. And this quote just nails that idea. Caleb Gattagedno, the creator of a method called the silent way, he put it perfectly. The goal isn't just to fill a bucket with facts, it's to build the skills to fill your own bucket for the rest of your life. Okay, so once you've got your purpose, you need a floor plan. This is the syllabus. It answers 2 key questions. What are we going to talk about, and what language do we need to talk about it? It's how you select and sequence all the actual content. And you can really see how this plays out in the real world. A method's main objective directly shapes its syllabus. So the audiolingual method, with its goal of accuracy, it naturally organizes its content around a grammatical syllabus. You learn verb tenses in a super specific order. But something like task-based language teaching, which is way more process-oriented, organizes the class around completing real-world tasks, and the grammar just comes up when you need it. And here's a really cool distinction. Most syllabi are what we call a priori. They're all planned out before the course even starts. But some methods, like community language learning, have an a posteriori syllabus. It actually emerges organically from what the students themselves decide they want to talk about each day. The content is literally co-created right there in the moment. How cool is that? So we have our foundation and our floor plan. Now it's time to look at what actually happens inside our building. This is all about the learning and teaching activities. A lot of the time, the activities are the most visible part of any method. If you see students just drilling patterns over and over, you're probably in an audiolingual classroom. If they're working in pairs to solve a puzzle where each person has different information, that's called an information gap, that's a classic sign of communicative language teaching. The choice of activity is a direct reflection of the method's core beliefs about how we learn best. Okay, let's move to the human element now. A building isn't much without people, right? So what are the roles of the learners and the teachers inside this design? You know, there's been a huge shift over time. In older methods like audiolingualism, the learner was often seen as this passive recipient, basically someone who just sat there and absorbed information from the teacher. But more modern, humanistic approaches see the learner as an active participant, a problem solver who really takes control of their own learning journey. And that, of course, completely changes the teacher's role. I mean, think about it. If your objective is all about the product and your syllabus is a fixed list of grammar points, it makes total sense for the teacher to be the director, the one source of knowledge who controls everything. But if your objective is about the process, the teacher has to become a facilitator or a counselor, someone who guides and supports learners as they discover things for themselves. The role is a direct result of all the other design choices.
We've got our blueprint, our activities, and our people. The very last component of our design is about furnishing the space. This is the role of instructional materials.
Materials are so much more than just textbooks. They're really the tangible expression of a method's whole philosophy. A worksheet with grammar drills, a city map for a role play, or even a set of colored rods can fundamentally change the classroom dynamic. They can be the main source of all information, a simple tool for practice, or even the very thing that forces students to talk to each other to solve a problem.
And the role of materials totally changes with the method. In task-based learning, the materials might be a set of instructions for a real-world task, like figuring out how to plan a trip. But in content-based instruction, where you're learning history through French, well, the history textbook is the core material. It's the vehicle for both the subject matter and the language.
So there you have it, the complete blueprint: objectives, syllabus, activities, and the roles for learners, teachers, and materials. See, it's not a menu where you can just pick and choose what you like. All 6 of these components have to lock together, each one reinforcing the others, to create that single, cohesive, and effective learning experience. It's really a beautifully designed system when you think about it.
Of course, the thing is, there's no single perfect method that works for everyone in every single situation. And that leads to a final thought. Now that you have the blueprint, if you were going to design a language learning experience from scratch, what choices would you make? What would your foundation be? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.